that no, this is of no concern to them, as long as they actually still send money to Zimbabwe or they still read news about Zimbabwe. This is their issue. Zimbabwe is their issue. What happens in Zimbabwe is their issue. The future of Zimbabwe is their issue. So we need to be honest with ourselves in this case and get up and do what we can to make Zimbabwe make us feel good when we think about it, as opposed to being a cause of sadness whenever we think about it and then whenever we read news about it. So that is what the gist of what we're about. What I'd like us to proceed to now is to start also presenting some of the other things that we've been doing and we are doing as the Management Committee of We Zimbabwe. I'll start by discussing the issues on the finance and treasury side. Mr. Mvubu, who is the treasurer, is not here today. Was unable to make it. So I'll actually present on his behalf where we are. In terms of the finance, we are not taking funds from the government of Zimbabwe. In fact, we are not related to any political party or government institution in Zimbabwe in the sense of our... Excuse me, there's somebody with a lot of background noise. Is that you, Mike? Could you please mute yourself? Mike, could you please mute yourself?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can you please mute yourself?
I'm sorry about that. It does say...
Okay, thank you. Ndiweni, are you back? Unmute yourself, please.
Yes, I'm back. Yes, I'm back, Lunga. Yes, yeah.
Okay, I've not seen that you're back. Okay, please continue to closure, please.
Yes.
Proceed.
Yes, a small little glitch, computer glitch on that. So really, as my right about, as we're saying, and at the back end of what our secretary was saying, what Lunga was saying, was that as an organization, as an institution, we have a lot of work before us. It is not an easy thing that we're trying to do. I think within the SADC region, or within Africa as a whole, Namibia was the first one to undertake electronic elections. We are trying to do that process ourselves. And obviously, this is a huge task that is before us. And so that's something we're going to have to address ourselves to see how we do that and how we put it together, because that's really the Achilles heel of the organization, of how it is you can reach people in the SADC region simultaneously as Europe and the Americans and as Asian countries, all simultaneous to get those votes. Electronically, it means that really we do not impinge upon the time and the quality time of the people, the Zimbabweans, wherever they are in the world. Zimbabweans are very hard-working people. We all know that. Their time is very precious indeed. Likewise, both the Zimbabweans back home. But with electronic voting, at least someone can vote on their mobile phone, on their laptop, on their iPad, wherever it is. We're choosing this methodology so that really we draw a clear line away from that process that has been found not to be wanting from the international arena. The idea or the notion of people queuing out outside Zimbabwean embassies or anything to do with the current administration or ZEC, that alone will raise eyebrows, and rightly so, purely because the electoral reforms that should have been implemented have not been. So for us, we will not get involved in the technicalities of that. We're staying well clear from that by simply saying we are independent. We'll undertake it in our own process of how we do that. That way around, obviously giving security to the Zimbabweans in the diaspora. I know this is a major thing for all Zimbabweans, whether you're in the diaspora the security aspect. The security aspect touches everybody in that particular way. And so we will be sensitive to that. We have to be sensitive to that. So that when people are giving us their personal details for them to register with the organization for votes, for all the other things, we know how to make them secure, how to handle it, and that they don't have any comeuppance, whether in the diaspora or from their relations back home. So we are being very particular on those issues of how we go forward and how we do these things. As My Right to Vote, we will be formally engaging significant international organizations to see whether they can work with us and how far they can work with us. But once again, we will always be maintaining our impartiality and to make sure that indeed we do have a clear and transparent electoral process. What was very clear and very interesting from the recent statements that came out from our current administration, our government, was that one of the reasons why... Ooh, someone's loud on the... There's a young one talking here. What was...
Shamiso, can you please mute yourself? Shamiso, thank you.
Yes, that's good. That's good. What was very clear that came out from the current administration when they were talking about the Zimbabwean diaspora vote, that interview that was given by the political commissar, Patrick Chinamaso. Basically, he was saying that they were afraid of the Zimbabwean diaspora constituency. They were worried of that constituency. He cited that the current ruling party, would not have a level playing field when it came to the Zimbabwean diaspora. That argument really did not hold water, and during the process, sanctions was lobbed into it. All of those things do not hold water because we are standing on principle. We refuse to get involved and get into the mud of partisan politics. We are staying on principle, whereby that principle says you have a human right to vote. It's as simple as that, and we cannot really deviate from that. To say whoever you are, if you come from Zimbabwe and there's Zimbabwean elections, you are allowed to vote in those elections, and everyone should make sure that you are. In the SADC region, we have South Africa. When it came in, the first elections, they had voting from the diaspora. They then changed their mind, but then the Constitutional Court in South Africa reverted them back and said you must include them, the South African diaspora. So they are part of that process already. And likewise, I think through the African continent now, we have over 15 or so plus countries that recognize the diaspora vote from their respective countries. So it is something that is getting forward, it's something that's progressing, that we too need to get on board. But what is very stark for Zimbabwe, what is very visible for Zimbabwe, are the percentages, i.e., if we leave aside the actual numbers itself and we say, what percent of your population are you denying the vote to? Then it becomes a different game. Because for us in Zimbabwe, it's 50% plus if we look at what happened in 2028. So to deny 50% plus of your populace the vote, it's a misnomer. It's something that really can't be accepted, or we can't sit back and say, no, we'll accept that. And more importantly, it brings the onus back to us. If the current government has said, no, we do not want that, surely it then gives us the responsibility to say, well, then what can we do on our own to rectify the situation? How can we rebalance the scales ourselves? Because you've got to bear in mind that there's something that's there already. There's a door that is already wide opened. This door has been wide open for a very long time. That is that the Zimbabwean diaspora must be allowed to vote. This was written down in the last election observers report in 2018 and the other elections before that, preceding that. Now, when this was included in those reports, it wasn't brought in by foreigners coming in to observe elections in Zimbabwe and then saying, oh, you must have the diaspora vote. Those recommendations were partly wrote and written by Zimbabweans working in conjunction with the observers and in conjunction with the international arena. So we must get away from the view that the reforms were something that were imposed upon Zimbabwe. There was no imposition on that at all. This was something that the people were saying, and even in the 2028 elections, that was brought in. And yes, the observers did go to traditional leaders, did ask traditional leaders to say, is this something that you want? They also asked the civic organizations, they asked NGOs, they asked members of parliament, they asked the leading fraternity, they asked the academic fraternity. All of them were replying in unison, saying, yes, we do need this included. This must be included in any elections that we do, because then we'll have balance. Because we cannot have balance if only less than half the people are voting in an election. It makes a nonsense of that process. At least bring in the other 50% plus. But on this particular occasion, the 50% plus we're talking about are those individuals who will truly, truly, truly have a free and fair election. Because they're out in the diaspora, their votes will be secure, will be counted separately. They will not be included in the power that goes into SEC, will not be included in the power that goes into the current administration. So at least they will have that security to say, well, our vote was free, fair, and accountable and transparent. So that is why we're going on this recruitment drive, to say we want this to be brought in. But what we cannot accept is a single individual by themselves saying, 5 million people, I reject you from voting, which is the current situation in Zimbabwe. A single person stands up and says, I reject 5 million people. And so for us as My Right to Vote, it pushes us on that trajectory that we must proceed with our course of action to see how we can do it. And the international arena has already said, yes, we do want the Zimbabwean diaspora vote to come in. Zimbabweans in the diaspora must be able to vote and to speak for the very first time. So there it is, Babalunga. If you are there.
Yes, I am here. Thank you, Mr. Ndiweni. I think the other thing that we need to emphasize as well is that what we are really asking for is enfranchisement of every Zimbabwean. We are not asking them how to vote or who to vote for. We're just saying that whoever they wish to vote for, they should have that vote. So I was wondering if at this point I could also, we could actually present a summary presentations of the different committees in the organization. I'll start with the finance and the treasury. That is Mr. Mvubu is the one who chairs that, but he's not available today, so I'll give you a summary. The organization is not going cap in hand asking for money from the government or being supported by any government in particular. What we are, Mr. Tish, can you please mute yourself? We aim to get this organization to be owned and financed by Zimbabweans. So how we expect the majority of the finance to be raised will be through membership and through donations, and also through the participation of the Zimbabweans who actually own the organization. We will get some funding, obviously, from other institutions that will be supporting our cause in terms of friends of My Right to Vote. But really, we would like this to be mostly a Zimbabwean-led and a Zimbabwean-run organization and financed as well. So one of the things that we've done is that over the past several months, we've been working on coming up with a membership plan. So on our website, we've got a membership link where anyone can go and become a member, and they pay the membership fee. That membership fee will actually come into My Right to Vote as part of the financing of the organization. And the next thing that we'll be actually also doing is appealing to human rights, friends of human rights globally, and also especially in Africa, who can make donations to the organization. And in all this, we aim to actually not end up trumpeting or being dominated by any single source of funding. So we really appeal to Zimbabweans to get involved in every which way to make sure that their voice and their ownership of the organization is not lost. I'm sorry, I've got a battery issue here. So far, we've actually started the membership drive, and we hope that in the coming months, we'll be driving that with all these meetings as well. We get more people will be joining us, and through that, we'll start the program towards our voters' roll. And with the voters' roll, that will be in preparation for the election, the diaspora election. And when we say diaspora election, it doesn't really exclude all those in Zimbabwe, because there are some people in Zimbabwe who actually are disenfranchised, and also there are people in Zimbabwe who want to participate in the in My Right to Vote elections, our voters' roll. So this will be open to all those people, and we'll be communicating and engaging those in Zimbabwe, inside Zimbabwe, to make sure that they are party to this. The other thing that we need to raise at this point is that as much as Zimbabweans, I said it in brief earlier, as much as Zimbabweans are out all over the world, there is still that emotional attachment to Zimbabwe, what is happening in Zimbabwe, the development of Zimbabwe. So really, we cannot afford to actually outsource that to others, to the international community, to international institutions. That is our responsibility to make things happen and to be the driving force behind that. So, as I say, the finances, we expect people through membership and through donations to drive the organization. And now I'd like to pass the mic to Mr. Arnold Bebe, who's actually chairing the subcommittee on mobilization and setting up global structures. Mr. Bebe, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for the invitation, and good afternoon, or good morning, or evening, wherever you are. I am the Global Campaigns Chairperson. What I do is to lead the mobilization of our people in the diaspora, wherever they are. The job seems quite simple, but in reality is quite tedious and difficult. What it entails is the following. It is about creating structures across the global, across the globe, wherever our people are. That is number one. Number two, it is identifying individuals, groups, and organizations with whom we can work in furtherance of our cause. Number 3, it is working with all Zimbabwean stakeholders, including political parties and civic organizations, in uniting our voice and pursuing the agenda of the organization. So I think those are the 3 primary things that my department is set to do in its thrust to put the organization right wherever our people are. So where is our focus? As Chief Ndiweni has said, we have got over 5 million people in the diaspora. So the biggest number of our people is in South Africa. And we have quite a chunk in Botswana, Namibia, UK, United States of America, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. So what we do is we create structures in those areas. In South Africa, for instance, let me give you a picture of what we do. We have Mpumalanga province, we have Gauteng province, we have KwaZulu-Natal province, and we have Limpopo province, we have Cape Town province. Now, we have in South Africa what we call a regional chairperson, because South Africa, the South African chapter is taken as a chapter, is taken as a region, rather. So South Africa is a region, and it has got a regional chairperson. And these provinces, which I've just mentioned, Limpopo, Gauteng, Cape Town, KwaZulu-Natal, and so on, have got committees that are led by chairpersons. And these committees consist of the chairman, secretary, treasurer, and some committee members. So in Gauteng, we've got a committee consisting of chairperson, secretary, treasurer, and committee members. You go to Limpopo, you have got the same structure. You go to Cape Town, you've got the same structure. All those people answerable to the regional chairperson, because South Africa is a region. And then you go to Botswana, it is the same thing. We've got the regional chairperson of Botswana. He has got these structures, for instance, in Gaborone, Francistown, and elsewhere. So those structures that report to him have got the same outlook, such as I've outlined with the South African chapter. So we have got the Botswana chapter, which is up and running. We have got the South African chapter, which is up and running. And then we have got the same again happening in Namibia. So that's how we are doing the things. What we are looking forward to quickly putting together are the overseas places such as the United Kingdom itself. We've got Canada, we've got Australia and other places, the United States of America. We are working towards forming those structures. This cannot happen from the remoteness of where I am. I can't do it myself unless we identify people in those areas who in turn will come to us and say, yes, we are willing horses. We can put these things together and we can work towards furthering the cause of our organization. In a nutshell, I think that is all that I would like to have to say to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bebe. There are others as well in the management committee. I would like to introduce Mr. Andrew Mtunzi, who's here as well. He's going to be working with us, specializing in the online presence. As you can see, that we've now got a website, and also we've got administration in terms of the payments and online payments for memberships, as well as social media management. We've got presence in Twitter, YouTube, TikTok even, we've got Facebook as well. So all that require more resources in terms of people, human resources to manage. And as you can all appreciate, because this is a sensitive matter, a lot of security is required in order to get the right people on board. We are looking at people that can actually help us in all of these areas, especially for the regional chapters. But we actually have to be really careful about who we bring on board. So that's where we are. I think now we would like to open the floor to the most important people here, which is yourselves, the people that are attending this meeting today, for our questions and answer session. So we'd like, I do not know how we can easily do this. We know that some people might not have the broadband access or the bandwidth, but we're going to try and get people to just either raise their hands online, or they can just type a message on the chat in the chat room. If you would like to ask a question, you can please raise your hand, or whichever way you want us to identify you that you have a question, and then we can take it from there. I can see that others are not on video anymore. Are there any questions?
Rusty Malcolm has raised his hand.
Okay. Please, Rusty, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone. I just have one question. We have later on this year, probably run into next year, the population census that is happening within the bounds of Zimbabwe. Would it not be an idea for us to push that the population census includes the diaspora, for the very reason that the Zimbabwe government is still responsible for its citizens wherever they are? Thank you.
That is a very good point. I think the population census has got to include that Zimbabweans in the diaspora. And also, one of the things that we've got to look into in that population census, as well as the voters' roll, is the fact that there are Zimbabweans who've been outside Zimbabwe for up to over 20 years, 18, 20 years. They've got children that have been born outside of Zimbabwe. And those people as well, they should actually be included. So that is a very good point. I think what we need to do is to look at this, how we can engage on this. I do not know if Chief Ndiweni has got something else to add on that.
Yes, thank you, Secretary. No, that's a very good one there, Rusty. Definitely we'll push for that. It's a credible one indeed. But also, even to wrap it up a little bit further, it will be moving from the population census, but also to having the discussions in Zimbabwe about, fair enough, at the moment they are not quite okay with the idea of the diaspora vote, but at some point in time, the government in itself, the legislator itself, has to come to terms with, in the eventuality of the diaspora voting, how will that vote be counted? What constituency will it go into? How will that happen? At that point in time, yes, obviously, they'll have to engage in that discussion. For example, if you look in Mozambique, they haven't quite managed to bring the diaspora to voting, but it's in law, it's part of their law. And I think for the Mozambican diaspora, they have given, I think, 5 or 6 seats in the parliament to represent their diaspora. So there is a conversation still out there. Whether I was saying the Zimbabwean diaspora will just dovetail into the existing constituencies in Zimbabwe, or are we saying the parliament or the government will push aside X number of seats for the Zimbabwean diaspora? But that's on the back of the census idea which you brought in, which I think, yes, we too will push for that.
And actually related to that as well, there's another idea that has been discussed, which other countries are addressing, that there should be a ministry or some sort of organization for the diaspora. In Kenya, they've been looking at that, and I've been discussing something similar with some people there, politicians there, that because the diaspora is such a significant population, there is a need for a dedicated ministry or function to address the diaspora issues. And this is something that is quite important for the Zimbabweans in the diaspora, because some of the things that are happening to Zimbabweans in the diaspora are really frustrating. For instance, a simple thing that a lot of Zimbabweans in the diaspora have married people because they've been so long outside the country, they've married people out from other countries. Getting the documentation to apply for an entry visa, you cannot do it online. You have to go to the Zimbabwean embassy in London. And there are a lot of those simple administrative issues that are really frustrating for the Zimbabwean diaspora, which there needs to be a channel of addressing them. At the moment, we are going to be looking at that as well, and looking at ways we can actually make the diaspora voice to be heard by the authorities in Zimbabwe. But there are quite a few things that would be quite useful to voice for and having somebody to talk to for the diaspora. Does that answer your question, Mr. Malcolm? Or do you have anything else to add to that?
Thank you. Yes, I do. Just following on what you say, the diaspora vote, the government tend to hide behind it. How do we allocate it per constituency? But we do have the facility of a postal vote at MP. However, it may be worth us considering that the first diaspora vote only votes for the president, because then there is no question about who and where do you allocate the vote for. We just the constituency for the president is the whole country. So maybe as step one we get that vote and then we move on to the next one. It's just an idea.
Yes, that is a good point, because also it addresses the thing about what constituency do they vote for. That could cause an issue where people there could be vote rigging in a way by moving people to whatever constituency where you think you're going to lose, or you think you've got the best chance of winning. So that is another good point there.
Yes. No, that's good. That's good. Can you hear me there, Secretary Maulula?
Yes.
Yes. No, that's a good one there. I think that's a good answer for it. I have a question that's popped up here from Silas Ngala regarding since he's asking the question of since the government has stated its position about not wanting to accept the diaspora vote at this juncture, at this point in time, how do we, My Right to Vote, intend to proceed or to convince the government to change its mind? I think really that one there is the question of having the diasporans voting or registering with My Right to Vote. That way around, it empowers My Right to Vote to use all the levers that are already there in place, i.e. lever number one, which is the implementation of the electoral reforms. That document has been signed all over the world. It's something that's hanging in the air. It's something that can be pushed forward to say that this needs to be brought in line to do that. So we have those levers that we can address in that particular way, whether we're addressing them in the international arena, or whether we're addressing them bilaterally with different organizations or different governments. Those levers are there to gently coerce the current administration that you really do need the Zimbabwe diaspora vote online in that particular way. But then again, that's one of the things I mentioned earlier on, that we as My Right to Vote do not intend to be tied down. If, for argument's sake, the current administration does not wish to accept the diaspora vote. For us, we know we have the high ground. We know this is something that has been universally accepted. We know it's been accepted by the African Union. We know it's been accepted by the United Nations. We know it's been accepted by the international arena as a whole. So the onus, therefore, then comes on us, My Right to Vote, Zimbabwean diaspora, supported by Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe, to go the extra mile and engage those various institutions I made reference to say, we've not had any success in convincing our current administration, our current government, how can we push this envelope further so that the diaspora vote comes online? Because really, when we speak about it, it makes a mockery of the electoral process if 50% plus of your electorates are denied the vote on some spurious reason. So the onus is on us, really, to push this thing further in that particular way. And it is not really about us saying, oh, well, if they don't accept this current position in Harare, there's nothing we can do. There's a great deal we can do, a huge amount we can do. Our secretary, Mr. Lunga, made reference to the fact that we have the international arena of the human rights advocacy all over the world. Those are formidable institutions all over the world that can come to our aid and help us, even as far as getting in touch with the trade unions, both in Zimbabwe and internationally, and different such organizations, civic organizations. So there's a lot of armory in our position that we can use to make sure that the Zimbabwean has a vote, has a voice. Over to you, Babalung.
Okay, actually to add to that, I think fundamentally with any election, the fundamental value of an election is the legitimacy of that election. If you have a situation where the presidency is determined by a minority of those people who are rightfully, who have the right to be engaged in that vote, then it can't be deemed legitimate. And one of the reasons why a lot of countries, and those who do not have free and fair elections, they always have these non-entity parties that are created by the government, is to give them a semblance of legitimacy of the result. So if we get all the Zimbabweans engaged globally and they register on My Right to Vote electoral roll, it would be very difficult for anyone to insist that an election that excluded over 50% of the electorate is legitimate. So that pressure is going to be huge. And also there was a question that you just raised, Mr. Nkala. You said you're asking in terms of the support that My Right to Vote has globally. In terms of interest so far, it's been quite huge. The question is that we need to convert that interest into membership and registration on our voters roll. So now the focus is driving the membership, seeing how committed they are to the organization, and also developing and driving the voters roll registration for all those people. If those people are engaged and they join the organization as members is open to Zimbabweans and non-Zimbabweans, but the electoral roll is only open to Zimbabweans or those people with a right to vote. We should have a right to vote in Zimbabwe, who are being denied the right to vote in Zimbabwe at the moment. That is where the rubber hits the road, basically. If we can get those numbers up and we can get as many as possible, as many Zimbabweans as possible to register in our voters' roll at home and abroad. That would be the biggest lever that we have in order to push the agenda.
And then another one, Mr. Lunga. I think it was from Mr. Nkala there. Do opposition parties support my right to vote? There can be another lever to pressure detractors in my right to working with them. Yes, we will be formally approaching opposition party leaders and political parties as well. In the sense that really my right to vote is about leveling the political field for all political parties. We are all quite au fait and pretty understand that the field is not currently level in Zimbabwe. It's not level by any means. So for us, it's about also engaging all the political parties to say, if you really, really, really want to have a fair chance, a fair crack at possibly getting more voter support or getting your aims and objectives fulfilled in Zimbabwe, then you as an organization need to work with My Right to Vote, because that is our main objective, i.e. to unleash you into the country so that we can have a vibrant democracy working in there. So I think with those political parties, we will be approaching them to see how they feel about that and how they come in to working closely with My Right to Vote. That's in the same vein as other institutions like civic organizations, trade union movements, all the others. They all have a vested interest in making sure that somehow the field is made level. And really, for us, we are saying we can make the field level if you come and work with us, if we work jointly there. There is no competition here between someone registering with My Right to Vote and continuing to work in their political party, or someone registering with My Right to Vote and continuing to work in the trade union movement, or someone registering with My Right to Vote and continuing working with civil organizations. We are one and the same. So there's no competition here. My Right to Vote, as we were saying earlier on, does not get involved in partisan politics. We are independent, unashamedly independent. And our agenda fits all of those agendas for all of those institutions that I've just mentioned. Each one of those institutions at some point in time conducts either an internal election amongst themselves or gets into the election domain in a constituency, in a ward, in something like that. So they have a vested interest to ensure that when they do that, the electoral process is capable, is true, is fair, is transparent. So I think we will have a lot of support for that. Over to you, Donna.
Okay, there's another question from Jill that said, what is paramount for a lot of Zimbabweans is the security of the registration, either as a member or the voters roll. How sure are we, how can we assure the Zimbabweans that we are going to ensure their security in terms of the registrations as members as well as on the voters roll? That is something that we've discussed at great length, and we've taken time to make sure that we address that. At the moment, as I said earlier, that we are looking for people, the people that are going to be working with us on any of on the technology side. We need to screen them and make sure that they're the right people, and they will ensure and guarantee the security of the Zimbabweans who use the system to register as members. For the voters roll, we are looking at engaging global organizations that are involved in that industry to make sure that that one is bulletproof in terms of security, and the hosting of that infrastructure is hosted in such a way that no one can actually breach the security from anywhere. And also, that is to global standards in terms of security and securing the vote. So if we are going to do something that is parallel to ZEC, we can't do it to the standards, the quality standards at ZEC. we are aiming to do it at much higher standards than that. So that is something that we've been looking at, and we are going to continue looking at it and focus on getting the best that is there out there in the market.
And then, Babalunga, we've got a question from Jill Baker. What will My Right to Vote do to mitigate rigging? I think you've partly answered that, the issue of vote rigging, in the sense that we are taking the higher standard of whereby we are working in partnership with those international organizations who have the know-how, the skill, and the whereabouts, and the why-fors when it comes to plebiscites and elections, so that at least our election process is above that issue of vote rigging. That's why we're keeping very far away from ZEC. We're keeping very far away from the current government, because they haven't implemented those issues that would have mitigated vote rigging within Zimbabwe. So outside Zimbabwe, we as My Right to Vote have to make sure that we are squeaky clean when it comes to that. Over to you, Babalunga.
Okay, are there any questions? There was another question that was asked by somebody earlier. Was it today or yesterday? They were asking about, there's been a policy in the United Kingdom to deport all Zimbabweans back to Zimbabwe. And some of the Zimbabweans have been here for as long as 20 years. And they're being summarily deported to Zimbabwe. And this is a policy that has been arranged with the Zimbabwean government. At the moment, this is something new that has come on our radar. We're going to be looking at that and see how we can respond by either engaging the authorities here in the United Kingdom, or coming up with a strategy on how we can support Zimbabweans who are undergoing the current period of uncertainty. Are there any other questions?
No, there's one.
Or as a Zimbabwean, fear of the state-sponsored violence is what keeps me apolitical. How will my right to vote ensure that I'm not punished for seeking my right to vote? I think one of the things that we are talking about here is that a lot of people in Zimbabwe, they see politics as a binary game, that you either support the government or you support the opposition. We actually are not supporting either. We're supporting neither the government nor the opposition. We have come up with an agenda that is for all Zimbabweans. And there's really no reason for why any Zimbabwean, whether they're in the opposition or in government, they should oppose my right to vote's objectives and aims. Because those who are in government right now, they always talk about the aims and the objectives of the liberation struggle. The aims and the objectives of the liberation struggle was giving every Zimbabwean the vote, making sure that every Zimbabwean has a right to elect their own representatives, giving every Zimbabwean the right to get representation along with the taxation. So this really is not political in the historical sense of the Zimbabwean environment, where political means that we're partisan. We are political, but we're not partisan. And therefore, we do not anticipate the typical response of violence from any quarter to visit those who participate in this. And we are going to make sure that in our organization, we are not partisan, and any semblance of partisanship will need to be addressed immediately and harshly, so that we maintain our integrity as an organization that is standing up for all Zimbabweans, regardless of political party affiliation. As also mentioned earlier, that we are not really asking people to vote in any particular way. We are just asking for people to have the right to vote in their own way. Does that make sense?
Yes. If I may add on to that, Babalunga, as well, it's referring back to the statement I made earlier on, that we are standing on principle, and that at times maybe people may be taken aback by what we say or by what we do, especially when it comes to this issue of purity for our members. For us, we will play it down the line, straight down the line, whereby should we find that those who are standing for us publicly as my right to vote people are under pressure or under coercion or being harassed in any particular way, we will not hesitate in getting in touch with those organizations near the people or those countries in where those people are, those institutions where they are, and formally presenting the cases to them so that at least that's brought out into the open and action is taken by those respective countries or those respective organizations. So here we're not talking about a My Right organization that is hiding in the dark. We're not that kind of thing. We are a My Right organization whereby we are out there straight in front of you. If we get reports that, yes, in Gauteng province, our members are being harassed or coerced, or there's this issue or that issue, then we, as My Right to Vote, we need to engage the authorities there in Gauteng province officially. Because once again, we're coming on a point of principle whereby it is the rule of law, it is democracy. As My Right to Vote, or our membership, or the individual who is on the receiving end of those things, they have done nothing that transgresses the rule of law. So, no, we will stand up very quickly and we will approach. So it's a different kettle of fish. We are a different animal to what has been seen up until now, whereby we are not hiding anything under the bed. We're doing it in front of you. We're doing it in front of the current government in Zimbabwe. We're doing it in front of everyone because we have nothing to hide. We are following what the Brotherhood and Sisterhood of Nations have agreed is the human right to do that. So that's on that particular label there. If I can take the following question there, which was from AK. What ID documentation is required to evidence that I am Zimbabwean? This one here, purely because we know that there's history in the diaspora. There's history of people having to engage in the informal economies where they are not known, disappearing into those informal economies just to survive. That wasn't their fault. It was circumstance that brought them there. So for us, we will take a broad brush when it comes to the documentation. Obviously, we'll start by saying, do you have ID card with you, or passport, or birth certificate there with you? That's a starting point to see what the individual has. If the individual can't produce those or doesn't have those things there on them, then we move on to the next step of whereby we say, well, okay, we can register you with us in My Right to Vote, but there's work to do on your identification. Whether it means that you can get us in touch, or we can get in touch with people in Zimbabwe who can vouch for you or produce something that says your name or your identification. So we're taking a long view at this process of whereby we are going the extra mile to bring you in because you have already been disadvantaged. We cannot put you into another situation where you are disadvantaged yet again. So this view is not only particular to My Right to Vote, it's exactly the same view that is now bubbling away in the United States of America with the current president and vice president last week also talking about a similar thing, whereby they were saying, no, you cannot be stringent on these matters. You need to allow people to present themselves in whatever format that can show that, yes, there are bona fide Americans there. Likewise with us, My Right to Vote. We will take a similar stance so that at least we can say these are Zimbabweans, because we know you have been disadvantaged. You are starting from a position that has put you at a disadvantage. So I'll be saying to all people, register with us, provide whatever documentation you have. If you don't have those documentations, then at least give us your name and contact details and the likes, and then later on, we can follow this process through. And for those that don't have documentation and are in the diaspora, you're not alone. You're not alone. Because as I said earlier on, over 300,000 children and descendants of workers that came from Malawi, Zambia, Mozambique, and the likes have not been given any form of identification, even though they've been over there for over 40 years, over 50 years, over 60 years. So we understand the history involved. That is why we'll take a long view at this and say we start by having your name, your contact details, and then follow it through from there. Babalung.
Yes, to add to that as well, by the way, in case you don't know, everything in Zimbabwe in terms of ID is digitalized. So we can actually source information, and based on a sibling or somebody else who can vouch for you, we can verify that. So there has to be a multi-pronged approach to what we actually are authenticating the people that want to vote. And there was another question as well about how will you reach Zimbabweans in SA without smartphones or data? That is one of the reasons why Mr. Bebe is busy setting up structures in South Africa and across the region in SADC. What we're doing there is that we're going to have people on the ground that will support the effort in recruiting people who do not have money or funds for data, for smartphones. And then by setting up those local structures, that would be a mechanism to reach out to them, not only one way, to actually get a dialogue going with all those people that cannot easily access internet or via smartphones or with data. And then the other question which was raised here was that does the fact that there are few people on this Zoom indicate lack of interest and therefore not enough pressure to change the status quo? Actually, that is a valid point that you can raise, is that we can say that we expect the volume of people, the number of people to be astronomical from day one. But with such organizations I've been involved in others before, it actually starts as a trickle. Because, as you say, some people are afraid. Some people would actually want to come and sneak in without being identified. When they realize that their name would pop up, they would actually not. I saw some people were coming and then they go and they come and they go and then you see they disappear. There is fear in the Zimbabwean community. So one of the things that is gonna we want to help remove is that fear. By people coming, those who actually gather the courage to come and attend and discuss and question, they go to other people and they say, actually, this is a different organization. It is not an organization that is just standing up to oppose the government or to get involved in violence. That is part of how we get people to lose their fear and follow their conscience. As I said earlier, that a lot of Zimbabweans they're in the mode of outsourcing their own rights to other people, to third parties, to resolve those issues for them. That is not an option for a lot of Zimbabweans. And I think as we go along and Zimbabweans realize, especially in the diaspora, that they cannot do that any longer. It's gone on long enough without any result. We expect that people will actually come on board and they will attend these meetings. And one of the things that we're also going to be looking at, we're going to be monitoring soon, is that we've launched the website with the membership. We'll also look at that, the membership activity. And then we actually, we strategize accordingly as we go along.
I think there, if I could add on to your statement there. Yes, it's a valid question coming from Bebe there, Sonke Bebe. But touching on what Babalunga just said, the secretary just said, it's only early days yet. It's our first open Zoom in this particular manner. And I cannot underline the sense of fear amongst the Zimbabwean community. It is profound. It weighs on individuals like a heavy cloud. Because if that individual, no matter where they are in the world, if their papers aren't quite right, there's that fear that that individual will be sent back. There's that fear that maybe if they come out and they're seen in this, repercussions will come to their families and the lives back home in Zimbabwe. There's that fear all around everywhere. So it is not a question of really of saying people don't support it. It's the reverse, purely because even just the reaction of the Zimbabweans who have been deported allegedly from here, going back to Zimbabwe there. That fear is there. And the only way that that can be addressed is that an organization like this comes on board and works very closely with that populace that's under fear, under pressure, to break the yoke, to say, you have a right. It is your right to come into this here and bring it on and give them that security and embolden them to say nothing really will happen to you that's negative in that particular way. So I think it's a fair question on that. But for me, I'll be saying, let's see how we go, because we want to do a series of this. We want to see how we grow, how we progress, and I'm sure we will with that.
Okay, thanks, Ndiweni. I see there's another question from Sonke Bebe. Zimbabweans have lost trust in elections. What is my right to vote doing to untangle this issue? That is another very good point as well. I think one of the things that has caused a loss of trust in elections, it is because that the integrity of the elections has always been questioned. There's always been legitimacy issues after the elections. And that tails into who is actually in charge of elections. If there is an alternative election that they trust, that gives results, I think that lack of trust in elections will subside. And also by actually creating an election that is trusted, it puts pressure on any institution that supports an election or elections that are not trusted to do right. So this is not the end, but it's the beginning that will put the foundations to get to a point where we have elections that are trusted and that are effective, that people can have faith in being represented by how they voted.
If I could add, yeah. If I could add there, Babalung, on what you're saying. The whole point of the election in Zimbabwe is to elect a government that the people want, that the people have voted for. Obviously, we've been trying to do this here for 41 years, and it has not worked. So I can concur with the people who have lost faith in that process, as the Secretary just said, because it has not worked. But for us, as my right to vote, as I said earlier on, we are not just a one-horse organization. On the one hand, we've got our totally independent electoral process that we want to bring in and do it ourselves, which is totally different. But in addition to that electoral process, we have another process running parallel to that, which is heading one way and one way only, and that is a transitional government. So up until now in Zimbabwe, there is no organization that's actually saying that, to say, well, okay, here's a roadmap that takes us to that transitional government. The only talk that has been there in Zimbabwe has been talk about internal dialogue, and that's heading in one way, that's going to a government of national unity. We've been there, we've seen that, we've done that, that failed. For us, we're coming in with a different message, which we need to tell the people, hence this series of interviews that we're doing, whereby we want to bring over to the people that we're not just looking at the election and that ends there and it stops there. We're looking at a different roadmap, whereby even if, let's say for argument's sake, we have the election in 2023, if by that time we have garnered enough international support and we've garnered enough support from Zimbabweans, we could be looking at trying to bring in a transitional government a year after we've had those 2023 elections. 6 months after that government thought it had won and was in office. That process will be going in tandem. It's not divorced from the whole process. So whilst we're looking at saying, yes, get on board, register with My Right to Vote, that registration with My Right to Vote is for one, the vote, for two, to say you agree with what we envisage as being the roadmap for Zimbabwe, which is that process, heading towards a transitional government. Mawalungu.
Yes. Do you have anything to add? I see Sonke Pepe. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, it does. But it's about the maybe commuting that result into functionality. We know it won't be easy, so maybe explaining a bit more to the people how then you will use that to pressurize. I do understand you're talking about the international community, but I think there's something within the Zimbabweans themselves which they should be able to engage in to use that result. Is it then going to be used as, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of the right word. How then the result is out and it shows that there is need for maybe a transitional government or a change of government. But as we know, the Zimbabwean situation is not that easy. It's not black and white. There's a lot of issues involved. There's, many things which we don't want to mention here. Maybe we might sound a bit partisan, but really, my question is, how do you commute that result into functionality? How do you make it a transitional government? Because the Zimbabwean government, if just let's say the scenario is that ZANU-PF has lost, they won't take it lying. They will not just say, oh, this is the result, now we're reverting to that one, we're leaving the ZEC one. So how then do you do that?
Yes, if I could come into...
Please go on.
You read me? Oh, okay, I'll go on. I think where we come into that scenario is exactly where we are right now, whereby My Right to Vote is engaging those institutions, those governments, those regional bodies, way before the election, engaging them to say, this is the lie of the land in Zimbabwe. Number one, on principle, would you recognize a government that is elected by the current system in Zimbabwe? That's a fair question to ask all of the international arena and governments and regional bodies to say, when you have such figures before you, will you recognize such an outcome? Then those institutions will take a view. But for us, luckily for us, that view already says they will not want to recognize that, because they've already said so in black and white, to say you must bring in reforms, you must bring in the Zimbabwean diaspora. So we are already pushing at an open door, whereby when we knock at that office door for the individual, it's already partly open, whereby we can say, we are now engaging you on this matter, and can we push it forward, and how can we use your good office to ensure that those in authority in Zimbabwe play ball, to ensure that the wishes and aspirations of the Zimbabwean people, including the Zimbabwean diaspora, are truly followed, so that we are breaking the chain. Was up until now, the chain has been very solid in the sense that if the current government does not want something, then it does not happen. We are saying we don't agree with that. We are saying we have a different way of breaking that chain, so that what the people want happens. So that is where we are at.
And also adding on to what Ndiweni is saying is that we have to, I think as generally as Zimbabweans, we tend to underestimate the influence the regional bodies have on Zimbabwe or any country in Africa. The regional bodies have got immense power to change. I'll give you an example. What happened in West Africa? Yahya Jammeh was the leader of Gambia. And he actually thought that he was free to cancel an election, delegitimize a legitimate election. And he thought he could get away with it scot-free. He's now out of power, he's in exile. Because the Gambians organized themselves, and the regional body, it wasn't the Western powers that removed him. It was the regional body, ECOWAS, that told him that they gave him a timeline to leave power. And they provided him with an exit for exile. So the regional bodies which we are engaging, and one of the things that we were talking about security earlier on, that we are engaging the regional governments to make sure that if, for instance, we get people that feel that they're being harassed in, let's say, in South Africa, we are making sure that we've got contacts within all the political players and the state players, so that if Sonke Bebe is in South Africa, in Gauteng, and now she's got a security concern, we can call people that can address that and address that concretely. So the regional bodies have got a lot of a big role to play as part of the legitimization of an election, as well as the security of all the members of My Right to Vote in the region and further away. Does that make sense now?
It does. It does. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, just want to mention that Andrew Mtunzi has actually put up our handles for the various social media. Please, you can post to them and get in touch, add content, and if you've got any other questions after this, you can post them on there and we'll try to respond to them expeditiously. There's AK who says tribalism is big and Zim. It's also sponsored. Is My Right to Vote not seen as a minority project and the tribal majority therefore may not support? I'll pass that to Chief Ndiweni.
No, there I think you are right in the first part of your question, whereby tribalism has been sponsored for many, many years in Zimbabwe. Tribalism is continuing to be sponsored and supported even right now as we speak, and is continuing to be stoked up right now as we speak. For us, as My Right to Vote, we're taking a different view, whereby we want to be inclusive. We want to change the conversation when it comes to tribalism. You will see very shortly, hopefully, as My Right to Vote proceeds, how we will do that. For us, as My Right to Vote, we've already done recordings and writings from all 16 nations within Zimbabwe. So in My Right to Vote, at some place in our website or in our publication, we want to see those 16 languages brought out in the biggest possible way. We want that engagement on that particular level, so that whenever we're trying to canvass people down in Binga or Plumtree or Chikutu or Zwimba or wherever it is, it can be in their local dialect. It can be in their local languages. Up until now, the current establishment has not done that, purely because it's been on its own agenda. So really, I think we've got a head start on that. And for us, it's just about engaging the people on those particular levels. And yes, of course, we do take it on heart that in some areas of Zimbabwe, people have become very hardened and are very sensitive to tribal issues and how things are perceived on a tribal matter. But for us, as My Right to Vote, it is about to continuously chip away at those tribal fixations and those tribal issues that have been coming up. To actually say that, look here, as My Right to Vote, we have the answers that you are looking for. If you are feeling aggrieved, if you are feeling that you've not been represented, if you are feeling that you've not been given an equal share of this cake, the least thing you can do is to support My Right to Vote, because it is the only organization that is showing you a way out. Other organizations are speaking passionately about tribalism. They are speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very passionately about tribalism. They are speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organization is speaking very angry. They are really flustered about it, but they're not showing you a way out. Our organi showing you a tangible, realistic, practical way through that tribalism maze. They are showing you a lot of anger, a lot of certain exasperation with the whole situation. But for us, we are very coolly saying we have a way through this. And one of the way through is that why we chose a transitional government is because it is a transitional government that will have the power and the authority and the obligation to deal with such matters as tribalism. For those communities to bring their grievances to that government, and it will be obliged legally to deal with those issues. Right until now, those individuals who are feeling tribal issues and that they have not been given a fair chance at the democracy are speaking to an institution, a government that is not listening, that has closed its ears, that will not actually give them the time of day to say, okay, can you listen to us? We feel this, we feel that. We in My Right to Vote are saying there's another way. And we will go out actively to incorporate all other people from all other Zimbabweans. So give us a little time and that will come online. And we'll be doing it in a big format. Wamalum.
I think to add to that, I think one of the key things that we need to address is that in terms of the transitional government, this is not a government that is to be owned or influenced by My Right to Vote in the sense of assuming positions. The idea is that this will be an independent transitional authority that is not looking at what they're going to get after the transitional period. These people have got to be independent technocrats who come in there with a clear purpose, and they do that, they lay the foundation for the country, and they cannot then use that as a springboard for political office after that. So all these things that we're talking about that are sensitive, there's a case that I've been following in Ndiweni, where the people are being displaced from their, remember that rural people, the only asset they have is the land and their fields where they actually farm. Without that, really they've got no ways to sustain themselves. And I've been following this thing in Ndiweni that the people are being displaced and they've got nowhere to go. So those kind of things where you are really removing, taking away people's basic only means of sustenance, those are the things that we see that this transitional authority has got to address everything holistically so that we've got a good foundation of moving forward without looking back, but focus on developing the country and making sure that the standard of living of every Zimbabwean is raised, and people in the diaspora are proud to call themselves Zimbabweans, and they can go and contribute to a tangible program in the country to help Zimbabweans and Zimbabwe as a whole. Any more questions?
No. I think we're done, Babadona.
Okay. We'd like to thank everyone for attending this meeting. As you mentioned, this is the first in a series of meetings that will be working towards larger, broader public meetings. We actually started publicizing this meeting at short notice, and that now that we've actually seen the attendance and we've had these questions, we'll try to respond to these questions in all the subsequent meetings that we're going to be having, and we'll make sure that we start galvanizing people at home and abroad, and we build this into a more regular and much larger meeting. Is that, Mpogo, do you have a question?
No, I'm pointing you to a question from somebody called Pete, T-I-T-C-H. It came in about 2:07.
Where is the question?
It posted it at 2:07.
2:07, okay, sorry.
That's quite early on.
What will My Right to Vote mitigate rigging?
No, just before that one.
Okay. Thanks, Mpho. That is teach. Yeah, the state parties in power are seldom drivers of systems, mechanisms that would waste their losing of power. Do we have either by our own invention or through partners election equipment mechanisms that can be used to trial such a vote, ensure it is possible on a shoestring budget while not compromising the integrity of the vote, given both cost, legitimacy, factors the government has highlighted? Very good point. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that one of the key things that we need to address, we need to ensure that the quality of any vote that we election that we hold is superior to that of ZEC, for instance, so that it's unimpeachable. And in order to do that, we are looking at engaging. There already are companies that provide this service globally. And there are already organizations, international organizations and institutions that support this activity, i.e. electronic and global voting. So we are looking at engaging those institutions and also engaging those companies. Those companies will not necessarily charge or expect financial remuneration that is equivalent to what they'll get out there in the market when governments are paying. So those are the things that we'll be working with to actually find. These companies might want to be used as part of their reference material for their business, and others would actually want to do it as part of CSR. So there are various ways of getting the support that we need to come up with a legitimate and reputable election with integrity without necessarily having to pay the market prices for those services.
That's wonderful.
That is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Teach, does that answer your question?
That's wonderful.
Is it still there?
Thanks. All right, so later.
Yeah.
Is it still there, Teach?
Sharp.
Can't see him.
No, I can't see one.
Yeah. No, that's good then.
Okay, are there any last questions?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay,
We're
thank you for attending. Thank you for your attendance and your time. We'll be having these meetings on every Sunday at the same time. And we hope that those who did not get an opportunity to ask questions can think this over and then come up with questions that they want to pose next week. And also, if you've got anyone else who would be interested in what we're discussing here, please reach out to them, send them the links so that they can attend and we can actually discuss and make sure that we actually sharpen the X in terms of pushing our objective.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. In terms of my right to vote, where do I get the information in terms of registration and membership? Just as a quick question, is it on a website or something? In terms of
there is a website. Let me just type it.
Where do I get the information in terms of registration?
Right now.
As a quick question, is it on a website or something? In terms of
there is a website. Let me just type it.
Where do I get the information in terms of registration?
It's myrighttovote.org. But note that is the number 2, not TO. But note that is the number 2, not and there you find the background information as well, along with the how the membership. You can join using you can join online using your credit card or ATM card, debit card. I hope we meet again next week.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Kuloko miss.
Njani?
I know Sikona
Njani?
I know it was all right. For a starter, it was okay. It was okay. I think at one point there was about 20 people. So I suppose that would mean we'll review it obviously and it's Wednesday or Thursday, Wednesday, and prepare for Sunday.
Okay, ngulu umuntu obulela ifoni yakho.
Why ujikele mazini?
Ufaka icode engayisiyo bagcina ukuthi disabled.
Oh, okay.
Mandia ukuthi balokhuze bayilokhuze but wipe off everything.
Oh, good.
And I didn't know ukuthi nxa ngivulisa lapha bathi khona sebesende in-number to my other phone.
Yeah.
And you won't guess my other phone is in Zimbabwe. And the person was traveling yesterday to Zimbabwe, so I'm gonna ngithola manje.
Well, hopefully he should be able to retrieve into Zakuzonki.
I think not much, yeah. Just some numbers are corner mostly, yeah.
Okay.